What's up, everybody? Greg and Ryan here to go over episode 5 of Jordan Peele's The Twilight Zone. This is The Wunderkind.
Now, it's good that you watched the episode first. It's good that you did that, because there are spoilers ahead.
Stop that. This episode was written by Andrew Guess, who has worked on Community, 30 Rock, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and directed by Richard Shepard, who's worked on HBO's Girls and won an Emmy for his work on Ugly Betty. This story follows campaign manager Raff Hanks, portrayed by John Cho, who is determined to get Oliver Foley, played by Jacob Tremblay, elected as President of the United States.
It's easy to see The Wunderkind as the spiritual successor to It's a Good Life, the oft-remade story from the original Twilight Zone about what would happen if a small town was held captive by a prepubescent child who could change reality at will and punish anyone with bad thoughts.
Gopher, you be dead!
My, that's real fine that you done that. That's real fine, Anthony.
The twist with this update to the tale is that it asks us to imagine what it would be like in America if the President of the United States was a junk food eating, politically inexperienced adolescent mind that is more concerned with his popularity on social media than the impact or quality of his decisions, and who will terminate anyone within his cabinet who opposes him rather than confront the efficacy of his administration.
I know what I want. And you guys are gonna get that done for me, or I'll get other people to get it done for me. There won't be a shortage of people who want to work for the new President of the United States.
Before we get into Easter eggs and things we think you should pay attention to moving forward,
Whipple.
what are your main thoughts on this episode?
The second the kid prances into the Oval Office and makes his demands, the episode excels. I loved it.
I really liked it too. I love that this series has been so good about modernizing or being for modern times, but this one actually feels the most to me like it's a Twilight Zone episode that is also for modern times.
Yeah.
And, in particular, really coming down to that punchline ending where the character pays for his misdeeds.
Finally, they have one like
in
this.
just like a perfectly Twilight Zone-y kind of way.
It manages to match the absurdity of all the other 3 Good Life versions, including Joe Dante's awesome puppet-filled nightmare fantasy in the '83 movie. This version, the kid didn't even need any mental powers or any kind of godlike abilities to make his enemies go away.
Right, he just had the full force of the American government.
Oliver.
Mr. President.
Whereas the Twilight Zone movie updates the horrors but not the premise, and the 2000s Twilight Zone simply made a sequel, although admirably with the original 1961 cast, this adaptation actually deciphers and makes unsubtle Serling's original message. It works almost as a cipher for the original. In 1961, JFK was the youngest US president in history. Now, given Serling's progressive leaning, I doubt he was indicting Kennedy. However, It's a Good Life could have been an allegory for McCarthyist anti-communism, or an indictment of power in the hands of the inexperienced and uneducated. At one point in the original, the child makes TV, which is just a violent film of 2 dinosaurs fighting to the death. Every generation of screenwriter has faced a studio demand for violence over substance.
But we can't give you love and rhetoric without the blood. Blood is compulsory. They're all blood, you see.
Is that what people want?
It's what we do.
Some of our favorite moments from this episode, for me, right off the bat, Jordan Peele's intro monologue. I love the part where he taps the jukebox and then we get the swell of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, as if it was already not clear enough where we were going. The scene to me that was probably the most reminiscent of It's a Good Life is the sort of second time he freaks out about having to see a doctor. And in that moment, he gets so worked up that he bans adult doctors, which is, of course, where the episode ends. But that moment is so much like the It's a Good Life, because he's like, all right, we're going to do what I said, right? And everybody's, yes, Mr. President.
Sure.
Is just like, it's good. It's good you did that.
The imagery was on fire in this episode as well. I really enjoyed it, especially just the shot of the kid swinging around in the Oval Office. That won me over itself.
Right, they start with the basketball hoop in the Oval Office, and then it just goes crazier and crazier with each thing.
I even love the little drone shot they had over the cornfield, just to give a little subtle handshake.
Like on the campaign trail, there's flying over it.
Just over the cornfield, that's it.
Please, son, wish it into the cornfield, please.
I also love the sequence in the hallway where Raff is beginning to kind of melt down and realizing
That's my favorite part.
It's it's not a good thing. And everybody he talks to is like, what the hell, what are you talking about? He talks to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he's like, I'm in charge of the military, man. We're in this country, and that's the president.
Approval ratings through the roof. Everybody loves their video games. Strange time to be talking treason, Hanks.
That's treason.
And then he talks to his mom, and she's like, what do you want me to do? This is good. He's in charge. Everything's working out fine.
What was actually great about it, they didn't say, it's good.
Both of those were an opportunity to overquote It's a Good Life, and they just stepped away.
Thank God.
I have to say I admire the restraint that the showrunners have had so far with this series, because I don't know if I would have the same self-control to not quote the older sort of versions of the story. Like, I would have had... It's good that you did that, like, probably 5 or 6 times in that episode. But here, they don't do that.
Bill Mumy, you don't see him in this episode. At least I didn't see him. They could have had him play like Secretary of Defense. They could have had him be a news anchor somewhere. He wasn't there. At least I did not see him. He could be in that cornfield with everyone else cheering on the kid. I don't know. If you guys saw him in this episode, let us know in the comments down below. But I didn't spot him.
That was real good. Thanks a lot, guys.
My first favorite moment was the intro, but my last favorite moment is the outro.
Oh.
Now, if you remember, Serling's monologue in the original and also the sequel monologue ended with the same note of no comment on what you just saw.
Yeah.
Because I believe, at least in the original Serling thing, he was trying to make some kind of pointed comment and didn't want to overstate it, and is trying to be subtle. Peele, on the other hand, is totally unsubtle about it and just drives the point home, which is what I really like about this episode.
Razzle and dazzle people with the right lies, and eventually they'll go blind to the madness right in front of their faces.
We talked about how the absurdity kept building. I love the putting green.
Oh, God.
Like, the absurdity of the putting green in this, like, clearly, like, still mostly White House room, but they have just like recarpeted it into like this just ridiculous setup.
I also enjoyed the lighting in that scene because it just felt like maybe it's a little bit of a nod to Joe Dante's movie version.
It totally has that look.
They didn't go full on Suspiria, no Argento moments in this episode, but I feel like that green was a little nod to the movie.
Totally.
The one thing I really didn't like in this episode was the flashbacks. Those were completely unnecessary to box the story the way it did, where you had to keep going back. Now watching the entire episode, you realize that that was just to give our protagonist a little heart, because if you didn't have those, and you have the moment where the kid calls for his mom during the debate, it's over. He decides, no, I'm gonna keep going here, and let's go with this dead dog thing, and now at that point you're like, all right, buddy, you're gonna get what you paid for. It's coming for you. And then the ending with the kid coming in as the doctor, that would have just paid off so much more.
I totally agree. The flashbacks were pretty superfluous. I didn't need the reinforcement for the character, and it was sort of overly telegraphing the ending, which would have been, I agree, much more powerful without it.
If you just have the kid pointing, saying gun, they shoot him, it's a little callback to the original where the kid's pointing to make the guy go away, and then you just show the kid doctor, boom, you're solid.
I want to finish my video games.
Okay, let's jump into things we noticed and Easter eggs. Now, Oliver Foley's name is a tribute to the Twilight Zone character Helen Foley, who was the main character from the episode Nightmare as a Child and the 1983 film version of It's a Good Life.
At the beginning of the episode, Maura can be seen drinking a bottle of Calumet beer. This is the name of the alien race that sees humans as a nice snack in the classic episode To Serve Man.
If you look close at the child doctor's mask in this episode, you may notice that it looks mighty similar to the pig-nosed doctors from the classic episode Eye of the Beholder. You can spot a Busy Bee diner cup next to Oliver when he's prepping for his big debate. Now that is obviously from the classic episode Nick of Time. Now the Busy Bee diner also showed up in episode 3.
Thus far, we've been suspicious that there might be something of a super plot.
You have, I have
something
not.
Of world building going on in these episodes, and there was a couple things in this one that tie it to some of the other ones.
At the end of the Oliver and Homer YouTube video, you can see on the right side a thumbnail for something titled Freak Flight. Now this is a callback to episode 2, Nightmare at 30,000 Feet.
It's therefore possible to say that Nightmare at 30,000 Feet
Happened.
takes place during the election season of this episode. Elections in the United States are on November 7th.
Foley was on the magazines in October.
At the airport.
Yep.
And then there's Whipple.
Oh yes, Whipple.
So Whipple is from a classic episode of The Twilight Zone.
Brain center at Whipple.
We are seeing Whipple everywhere.
Yep.
It's the iPod in Nightmare at 30,000 Feet. It's the camera in Replay. And in this episode, we see it, 3 times?
Oh, they're not subtle about it this time around. You got Whipple News. So that tells you that Whipple, they are running strong. They're not just little, out-of-date toys that they went out of business. No, Whipple is a big corporation. And on top of that, you have your favorite little Easter egg, I think, for you is that pinball machine.
The Whipple pinball machine that's in the background in one of the scenes. And it's like just a child's toy, but it is a Mission to Mars Whipple pinball machine. And we've seen that in Nightmare at 30,000 Feet, the big banner for Mission to Mars.
Also, on top of all that, I guess we can go into this for next week's episode. Hey, it looks like they're going to give you what you wanted. You're getting your Mission to Mars. Yes. Now, in the future, I have a feeling we're probably going to get that robot swinging that pocket watch any day now. I think any episode we're going to get that. But for now, I think we get our Mission to Mars next week, and I'm excited. I can't wait.
Let us know what you think about this episode down in the comments, or if there's anything we missed, you can also hit us up on Twitter.
Yeah, and we'll see you all back here next week for episode 6. Bye-bye.